Welcome to this Vassa Uposatha program. Let us begin with a brief evening puja. I'm going to put the words up on the screen, and we can chant it in the Pali language. Ayya Sobhanā Arahant Samma Sambuddha Svakato Ye Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipanno Yassa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Dhammayang Bhagavantam Sadhammang Sasanghang Imehi Sankarehi Yatavahang Avopitehi Abhipujayama Sadhu no bhante bhagava sukhira parinim utopi panchima janata nukampamanasa ime sakavem dungatapannakar Ute parinyanhatu amhakandi karatam hitaya sukhaya araham samma sambuddha bhagava buddham bhagavantam abhivademi. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Handamayang buddhasa bhagavato bhaganamakaraṁ karumase.
Namo tassa
Bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. We can sit for meditation. Welcome to come to an upright and balanced posture for meditation. Being aware of the physical body, feeling the weight of the body pressing on the cushion. With your feet or legs on the cushion or the floor, feeling your connection to the earth. Aware of the sensations or feelings in the body. In particular, anything in the body which is tight or tense, letting that to be relaxed. Aware of the sensation at the top of the head and relaxing the top of the head. All the sensations in the face. And relaxing the face. The sensations. The shoulders, relaxing the shoulders. Letting the belly be soft. Letting the legs and shoulders and knees be relaxed. And taking a deep breath. Breathing in long. And breathing out long. And letting go of all tension or tightness when that breathing out. Breathing in long. Breathing out long. And then just allowing the breath to flow naturally. letting the mind settle on the rise and fall of the breath as a tranquil subject. The breath comes and goes by itself. We don't control it. We just watch. Making the mind as simple as possible. If anything else comes to awareness, a touch, a sound, a smell, a thought, keep the mind so calm, just aware of the rising of whatever it may be. And when that's finished, coming back to breath. If the mind is restless or wandering away, losing the breath, going to other thoughts, it's just because of cause and condition. Don't make it a problem. Just see if that wandering mind is permanent or impermanent. And when we can, coming back to the breath. But if the mind is able to stay connected and settled on the breath, letting that subject expand and fill the whole space of meditation. just the breath. Whatever feeling is connected to breath. The knowing faculty, the activity of mind, connected to breath. The flow of impermanence, all can be seen just in the breath. Resting awareness in this tranquil awareness of breath. Any disturbance that comes up to the mind, see it very clearly, just as it is, with compassion. And then when it's possible, come back to breath and bring the mind back to this calm and tranquil state of simply watching. And from this tranquil meditation, bringing to mind those who are troubled, those who are upset, those affected by war, those who are frightened, those who are angry, with the wish that the upset may come to its end, the anger may come to its end, the fear may come to its end, the wars may come to their end. May all beings, like myself, be free from anger, hostility, worry. May we stay in tranquil, peaceful awareness. May all beings have peace. May all beings have calm. To whatever extent we can release and let go of all tensions and aggravations in our meditation. Just the same way, may everyone let go of all the tension and aggravation as we have a peaceful mind. Let everyone have a peaceful mind as we are not disturbed by anything. May everyone be not disturbed. So, dear friends, we are now at the end of the first 2 weeks of this Vassa, where the community here at Dhammadharini has decided to undertake the theme of stopping the war as a theme of practice throughout this Vassa. I'm going to speak now about sort of a summary or a recap of what we have learned, of what we have been practicing with during these first 2 weeks. And at the end of my talk, I'm going to leave time to pass the mic around and invite the others, my colleagues here, to speak about what they might have noticed or noticed as far as the impact of this practice. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sangham namassami. When we are practicing to stop the war during a time when we're aware that out there in this human world, war is a happening thing, it's going on. The world is at war in so many ways, from mental thoughts of cruelty or indifference to the suffering of others, from throwing verbal darts and verbal blows at one another, almost as a matter of sport, thinking that it's funny to insult one another, to all the way up to the hot war, where the fabrications of humans are being blasted away, torn up and destroyed, and where human lives are being destroyed, where society is being destroyed, where families are being torn apart. Where morality itself is greatly challenged under this stress of trauma, where it may seem like there's some a necessity or some justification for hatred. When we think of practicing to end the war, in part it has a kind of a flavor of like the parita blessings that we give, which seem in a way to be at the material level almost impossible. How can we give a blessing for all diseases to be removed, for everyone to be completely well, completely free from disease, when we know and acknowledge that disease is part of existence here in samsara? How could the little quail speak to the fire and say, "Fire, go back," when we know that in the course of nature, the natural thing is for the fire to go forward and to engulf everything? So, in a way, what we are calling for is I'm not going to call it a miracle because that's bringing up a different religious system. But if we understand that here in samsara, the wandering on, the going on from life to life, driven by ignorance, greed, and aversion, by ignorance, greed, and hatred, the process of life does go on and on. That's the course of nature. In nature, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and there's a constant battle for survival. Goes on, and that's natural. But we know, as Buddhists, that there is something else, which is also completely natural. And the something else is the end of dukkha, the end of suffering, the realization of the escape from this round of samsara, the escape from this wandering on. And so then when we are giving that blessing, may those who are ill be free from illness, may those who are hateful be free from hatred, may those who are fearful be free from fear. Really what we're saying is may all beings obtain the highest, may they all obtain nibbana. So this is kind of something that even the Buddha, when he surveyed the world shortly after his enlightenment and was considering whether or not it would be worth it to even attempt to explain what he had realized, then the Buddha realized that some beings would not, at the present moment, be able to hear, understand, and benefit from the teaching of the Dhamma. However, there are some beings who can hear, who can be touched, who can realize the cessation of dukkha, who can realize nibbana when they have the opportunity, when they hear from one who has realized. In doing this practice of directing our consciousness to knowing how bad it is in our present world with the conflicts that are going on, there's one danger or a challenge for us, and that is it is kind of a normal aspect of a social animal, like a human being, that when we encounter emotions and attitudes and beliefs in others, there's a way, what we could call emotions are contagious, even ideas and thoughts are contagious. And so it's very easy to pick up the thoughts or the ideas or the emotions of others. In this way, it's so fortunate and such a blessing if we can be in contact with beings who have realized peace, or if we can read the suttas and read the words of our teacher who was a Buddha. And in that way, there is a kind of a contagion that those ideas, those thoughts, that mind is able to come to us, and we are able to swim in that sea, the sea of the Dhamma, which is a safe, uplifting, and universe, a sea that helps us to go forward with our own practice, with our own individual realization. But then on other occasions, if we encounter somebody who's extremely upset, who's extremely sad or depressed, who's extremely anxious, who's traumatized, then it's very much possible that our own mind could be disturbed, that our own hearts could be disturbed, that we could feel with our own body the fear, the anxiety, or the hatred, or whatever it is that is also being experienced by that other person. And this, in a certain way, is creating a disturbance, which is a challenge to our ability to practice, to our aim for that tranquil and peaceful kind of practice. In the Visuddhimagga, we studied this week how, based on passages in the suttas that Buddhaghosa pulled together, he developed a method for practicing loving kindness and the other divine abidings, the thought of sympathetic joy, compassion, and equanimity towards a hostile person by first going step by step through the other persons, starting with oneself, acknowledging and realizing directly just realizing directly the longing for happiness that we have, that one person has for themselves, how deeply settled within our basic human nature it is to seek happiness, to seek safety, to seek having our needs met, to take care of one's own welfare. We looked at the story of Queen Malika and King Pasenadi, where the king, they were very much in love, and they were good people. The king asked his wife Malika, "Darling, who do you love the best?" And the thought was that perhaps she would answer, "Oh, darling, I love you the best." But instead, the answer that she gave was, "Well, I love myself the best." And the king, being a good and wise person, did not react out of disappointment with that statement, but instead he reflected and he said, "Well, when I think of it, I also love myself the best." So this taking care of ourselves is a starting point of the practice. In Buddhaghosa, he says first taking that caring for oneself, and then extending it by stages, bringing to awareness a inspiring, noble Kalyanamitta, like a teacher or a hero, a mentor, someone who's very rich in beautiful, uplifting, and inspiring qualities, and then bringing to mind the happiness that comes to us when we see the goodness in them, and then developing the loving kindness further along that way, and then bringing awareness to a dear person that could be like our own relative, our own child, our own grandchild, our own life partner, someone who's just so lovable and beautiful to us that we just smile when we think of them because we're happy to think of them. And again, with all of these sort of like uplifting thoughts, building up in ourselves a simple emotion of happiness and allowing that to become refined and purified so that the sensual desire goes away from it. The greed goes away, and just left with an understanding about what is true happiness apart from sensuality and apart from greed. It is that natural happiness that resides in the mind of a person whenever the hindrances or the afflictive or negative factors are taken away. If we discover a seclusion from those negative factors, we find within ourselves there's this quiet fountain of happiness, which is always available and which does not have to depend on being around an inspiring person or a dear beloved person. It doesn't have to depend on getting what we need to take care of our welfare. It's just the happiness that resides within us. But thinking of those dear people can help us to arouse basically what can become a wholesome emotion that's experienced with the body and mind. And then with that, Buddhaghosa suggests moving that to the neutral person so that there's a spillover effect of our having a very clear image of what true happiness, true welfare is, then extending it to that neutral person. And I would say, just as the mental factor, the factor of equanimity can sometimes be noticed very clearly when there's a lot of neutral feeling, the neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. So in the practice of meditation at the fourth jhana, they say that the neutral feeling supports the experience of equanimity and mindfulness. So directing the mind towards neutral people. Why are they neutral people? They're neutral because one's attitude towards them is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. They're not pleasant to us, they're not unpleasant to us, they're just neutral. And we can then discover within ourselves this reservoir, this inner trait that we have available to us of equanimity, the fourth one of the divine abidings, and then we can sort of add them together so that this thought of kindness and the thought of equanimity are both there in a balanced and complete way. And then Buddhaghosa says one can turn the mind towards a hostile person, and the spillover effect of that true happiness and of that true equanimity can enable us to project our kindness towards that hostile person, and we will not pick up the contagion of their hostility. So their upset or their disturbance doesn't disturb or undermine our mind because of what we've developed with the preceding persons. This is the commentarial method of extending boundless loving kindness towards hostile individuals. And we should say that the hostile individuals could include persons who seem to be hostile towards us. It could include persons who have aroused in us some hostility towards them. Or it could be persons who are not directing their hostility at us, but they are living in an ocean of hostility, having more with other beings. So we don't have to be a person who has enemies or keeps enemies in order to practice loving kindness towards the hostile persons. There's plenty of hostile persons in the world, even if we don't have any enemies. In the sutta on the simile of the saw, that last section of the sutta where he's talking about if one would encounter a band of violent people who were using a great two-handled saw to cut off our limbs. The Buddha says that one should develop boundless loving kindness towards that individual person. Which is boundless and unlimited, but it is directed towards an individual person. This is unusual in the suttas. More often in the suttas, when we speak the sutta method of loving kindness, the idea is pervading the whole world, either pervading in all the directions or pervading consecutively, like the pure sound of the conch horn is reverberating over the whole valley, and the sound is touching everywhere. And so the same way, generally the idea of loving kindness is to be pervaded everywhere without being specially directed towards an individual. But we do have this specific instruction of the Buddha to direct the thought of loving kindness towards an individual, and in particular towards that violent individual. And so we take this as being a reason why it's completely within the teachings of the Buddha to actually cast our eye over the world and see where the war is happening at whatever level, whether it be a literal physical war with bombs, or whether it be a war with fists, or whether it be a war with words, or whether it be a war of thoughts, that we can direct our mind towards those individuals and pervade them with the boundless thought of loving kindness, having done whatever kind of preliminary practice is effective for us in order to make our minds very much stabilized, thoroughly pervaded with loving kindness, and thoroughly integrated, so that both, like the mind and body, are unified in this pervasive loving kindness. And in that way, we are able to direct the loving kindness specifically to where the suffering is, and let that be effective, so that we don't lose our concentration, we don't lose our meditation by feeling concerned or disturbed or activated by seeing what's happening out there where the war is happening. During these 2 weeks of practice, we noticed that there are many, many, many teachings in the suttas about letting go of resentment. It's kind of interesting the extent to which the sutta just acknowledges how much of a problem it is that a person may fall prey to liking and disliking. If there's an unpleasant sight, sound, taste, or smell, or an unpleasant thought, this could arouse dislike. And that dislike could become developed into a perception or a view that object out there, that person or that object, which is unpleasant for us, that they are bad. And that view can become, could develop a sort of a synergy that the unwise attention to what we have assumed to be bad and evil externally can then become a further trigger that creates arousal and agitation within us. And then it can elevate to all kinds of mental formations about the about our wish. It could take many different forms. One idea is it's like the dislikable or the disliked situation becomes a problem for the mind, and then we have to, in our imagination, solve the problem, and we feel that we're not able to rest, we're not able to be comfortable and contented until we have figured out in our minds how we could take that unsatisfactory circumstance and make it to be satisfactory. This is how so much of the energy of the world is involved with this mental process, this great capacity that humans, this entire part of the head, part of the brain that's inside the front of the head is what we have evolved to enable us to imagine things to be different than what they are, because the way it is seems to be unsatisfactory for us in some way. And so we imagine what the solution to the puzzle might be. Okay, so like this afternoon, I saw one of my colleagues here felt there was a circumstance in the toilet that didn't seem sanitary, and then they we had some conversation about it, and we came to a solution that we might want to remember to close the seat of the toilet before flushing, and feeling that, we might consider not keeping our toothbrush in the toilet, in the bathroom. We might consider keeping the toothbrush somewhere else, in a drawer somewhere else, so that then we wouldn't have to be anxious about a germ landing on the toothbrush and harming us later on. So this is an example that, something came up. It's an unpleasant thought, germs, dirty, going to make us sick. And then the mind, just spins around a little bit and comes to a solution. It's normal, it's natural, but it can become an obsession, and it can become an opposing kind of energy if it becomes strongly motivated by unwise attention to the things that we dislike. And so for that reason, it's super necessary to be quite sensitive to that disliking, which could harden into, it could flare up as anger, or it could harden into ill will. And if we have anger, or if we have ill will, we need to thoroughly understand it. We won't be able to do this practice of loving kindness towards the hostile people in the world who are suffering from war if we have not taken care and purified the tendency to resentment within ourselves. If we have been cultivating resentment, then as soon as we start thinking about those people out there who are worse than we are, because they're more displaying their anger more in a more bold way, whereas we're just cultivating anger in a kind of like a quiet and polite way. We may think that, by comparison, this actually happened to me when I started at in my monastic career. When I was a lay person, I was one of the nicest people I knew. It's like almost most of the people I knew seemed to be more angry than me. I thought I was nice, and then I went to the monastery and I got around people who were really nice. And I found out that I was flooded with anger. I had so much unresolved anger, and it was unresolved because I had not really examined and inspected it within myself, because I was not somebody who was like very overt in acting out with anger. I was just, being more like a passive aggressive or something like that. So then we would not successfully be able to develop loving kindness towards hostile persons unless we know how to take care of hostility within ourselves. In order to do that, first we got to understand the urgency of it, not make any excuses, and know for sure that the Buddha advised that if we are hostile, we should give up hostility. If we have a grudge, we should give up the grudge. And that's it. Then the question is about finding out how. Clearly, one of the ways is by this practice of the formal loving kindness meditation. There are other methods given in many of the examples of the suttas, and a lot of them are working on perceptions and giving wise attention and being able to control how we direct our awareness or how we direct our attention. So one example is about the people who are partly good and partly bad. In the sutta, it is people who their speech is pure, but their actions are impure, or vice versa, their actions are impure and their speech is pure. Or else both their speech and their actions are impure, but from time to time, they have a moment of clarity. The word is pasana. And then the fourth person is the one who their speech is bad, their actions are bad. They never have a moment of clarity. And then the last person is the person who's pure in every way. Their speech is pure, their actions are pure, and they regularly and frequently have those moments of clarity. So basically the metaphors given in that sutta are aiming to set aside that which is not lovable, set aside that which is impure, and direct awareness towards that which is pure in the person, or that which is lovable, or that which is good in the person. So directing awareness towards the good is a way of getting out of resentment. Compared to finding a rag on the road and carefully inspecting it, keeping the part of the rag which is still useful, and throwing away the parts of the rag that's not useful. Another aspect which is even more fundamental for getting rid of resentment is having cultivated meditation, awareness, and insight into the three marks of existence, that all things in samsara are unsatisfactory, impermanent, and without self. So if you really know that deeply, and you've reflected about that, and find how with many, many different things that one can experience, oh, it's dukkha, oh, it's impermanent, oh, it's not self. Then if we go along and we find something unpleasant, we're not surprised and we're not shocked. It's like, oh, the Blessed One was right. It's dukkha. It's inherent aspect of phenomena in this world to be unsatisfactory. And so even just like the arising of any kind of anger and resentment can be so easily just defeated and cut short if we just say, okay, that's unpleasant, and become contented in accepting that we were born here in samsara, and dukkha is the characteristic of samsara. So naturally we would find lots and lots of things that are unpleasant in this world. So it's okay, it's not a problem. And it's impermanent, so it's not a permanent characteristic of that person. So we would never dehumanize or disrespect any person by thinking that's an evil person, and that taint or the stain of their evil is always going to be on them. We would know that those people are just manifesting something because of causes and conditions, and it's what's sort of like out in front at the moment, but it's going to be constantly changing. And so then knowing that we won't think that that person should, that we would have any temptation to reciprocate evil for evil. That would just be adding to the spiral of negative conditions. And finally, in that realization of non-self, it would be like if you see a person as an aggregate of the five khandhas, and say, well, what am I angry with in that person? Am I angry at their body? Am I angry at their bones? Am I angry at their tears, or am I angry at their urine? Am I angry at their feelings? Am I angry at their perceptions? Am I angry at their ideas, their volitional formations, or their thoughts? Am I angry at their consciousness? And so then in that way, the anger just kind of like, it can be broken up kind of like by that analytical thing. So the totality of that person or that circumstance that's aroused our dislike or our resentment, it falls apart. And so then there's not a target to attract and hold on to our resentment. And so trying to direct resentment or direct a grudge towards a person can be seen to be as impossible as trying to take some paint and a paintbrush and paint the sky. It wasn't part of the original charge of this, the plan that we had for these 2 weeks, but it has been coming to my awareness that greed is also a huge motivator for war. People kill because they're trying to steal something that they want to have. People, nations go to war to get the natural resources that they wish to exploit from the country that they're hoping to conquer. And so in that way, I think it's extremely useful to also investigate a materialistic desire. It's partly, well, it's sensual desire in the sense that it's related to the five senses and to our ordinary appetites. And it's also materialistic desire that has a lot to do with, it's something that we see in the sutta, especially in the Sutta Nipata. They talk about a farmer or the householder, and they have their spouse and their children and their house and the barn and the cows and the fields, and they've harvested the rice, and the granary is filled with rice, and the house is in good repair. And so they're experiencing this sensual happiness. So this is not just the kind of happiness about like a luxury or taking a bubble bath or having a drink or something like that. This is the happiness of accumulating a material wealth that both you can enjoy it whenever you have it, and you also have this idea that you've got a buffer of safety because you've invested so much in your children, and your children hopefully they all grew up and they all became healthy adults who were capable of carrying on your family business. as if this would ever be a secure thing. I mean, we know that it's not secure, and we know that even your full barn full of rice and grain, and your pantry full of food, or your even your bomb shelter, which is filled with all the supplies you will need in case of a big disaster. That none of those things are secure. They're not secure. But the greed that we have that's going in that direction is a tremendous danger for war. And my idea about this, I've not fully developed in terms of the suttas, but it seems to me that because of greed, it can happen that even a good person, somebody who has undertaken a certain set of precepts, then can be tempted to cut corners with their precepts because of greed. And it's for this reason, in fact, that the monastic communities have had a lot of sort of like back and forth in the development of the monastic rules. We could say that the monks are allowed to wear slippers or shoes in the forest, and then they wanted to have slippers embroidered with pictures and with pointed toes that curl up. And why is that? It's because of greed. They wanted to have fun. They wanted to show off. They wanted to distract themselves with something pretty. And then so like a whole series of rules got made that the footwear, which is allowed to protect the health of a monastic while they're in the forest, having to walk on rough ground, that it had to be simple and just for the purpose of protecting health, not for the purpose of pleasure. When we take the food, every time we have the food, we remind ourselves that we're taking this food for the sake of protecting the health of the body and making it possible to go on for one more day to practice for awakening. That we're not having food for fun. We're not having food for beauty. We're not having food for pleasure. And so if we start having food for fun and pleasure, then we're on a slippery slope where it will become painful and difficult to do the monastic practice of only eating before noon and fasting for the remainder of the day. But if we are able to practice that, we're having that mindfulness and clear comprehension as we go through the day, through all the activities of life, and we're keeping in our awareness, what's this for? What's the purpose? This is for the purpose of the Dhamma, for the purpose of being able to practice. Then it is so much more possible to realize how the body can be light, nimble, and healthy when we know the measure of food, and eat just the right amount of food and not too much, and eat at the right time of day and not at the wrong time of day. So if a person doesn't have the sensitivity of seeing the danger in greed, then it's my sense that their virtue is in danger. And once we start cutting corners on our virtue, then everything can escalate. And the next thing you know, we're hitting one another with clods and sticks and swords, or practicing war, or undertaking to kill beings that got in our way. So the safety from that is from really controlling, really seeing the danger in greed and not allowing greed to take hold. Knowing that, just as the Buddha said, if you have regret, you got to get rid of it. Saying, if you have sensual greed, don't cultivate that. The time has gone by for me in a delightful process of remembering the wonderful Dhammas that we've been considering together for these past couple of weeks. And now I'd like to invite and see whether any of the other monastics are happy to add their own observation. Perhaps starting with Tathālokā, if you would like to give any corrections or additions to this talk.
So, greetings, Ai, and to everyone who might be seeing or hearing this. We didn't actually prepare the microphone to be used here now, so I don't know if the sound is coming through all right.
Your voice is very clear.
Okay. So first, I really want to just express my appreciation. I've been finding this talk so interesting and engaging and useful and valuable, and I get so timely and relevant and important. So I just feel glad about that. I was contemplating two different things that you brought up. And one of them is this saying that we find in Christianity, or then spread around in American and Western culture, perhaps from Christianity, of like hate the sin but love the sinner. And several times that's come up in Dhamma conversation, and then there have been people who were studying Buddhism, even sometimes for some years, who felt that that was really not appropriate according to the Buddha's teaching. However, contemplating what the Buddha had taught about persons and action, or karma, and kusala karma, akusala karma, wholesome and unwholesome actions, or skillful or unskillful actions, actions motivated by skillful and wholesome mental states, or motivated by and unwholesome mental states. In some of the suttas, then the Buddha mentions clearly that he does not decry any person, that it's not about persons. And so you were speaking about this. Like if we look at person, where can we find among the five khandhas and their impermanence, their anicca, dukkha, and anatta nature? Like where can we find that? And if we find it, does it have anything that is a lasting self? Just to recognize that it's not that. It's particular behaviors. It's karma. whether it's a body or speech or mind, it's behaviors that have affection for or disaffection much of the time. And for ourselves, this is the karma. With the intentional conscious behaviors of body, speech, and I was just reflecting about this during your talk, and then reflecting in this way and listening to what you were saying. I also feel that saying, even though I was not brought up Christian, so I might have misunderstood, not have got the proper catechism, doctrinal understanding. I feel like the hate the sin but love the sinner may not be so far off in this regard, except I think the love the sinner, yes. Hate the sin, even then I have to bring up the question in the Buddha's teaching, is hatred with regards to unskillful, unwholesome behaviors, whether our own or others, is that appropriate and wise action? Certainly the Buddha denounced particular behaviors and decried particular behaviors, advised against particular behaviors, like the Karaniyamata Kusalena. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness. And this is about kara and akara, to be done or not to be done. Kusala, akusala, wholesome or unwholesome, beneficial or unbeneficial. I feel when we see it just in that way, clearly see it in just that way, and this becomes a basis for insight, and it also becomes a basis for that equanimity that you were talking about. It's like the insight becomes the basis for the equanimity, or the equanimity that arises from seeing in a balanced way becomes the basis for the insight. It's like it can go on either side, either way. It can go both ways. Both of them help each other. They further each other. I was contemplating in this way and wonder if you, Ayya, or anyone else here among our colleagues have any thoughts about that.
Thank you, Ayya. See if Ayya Brahmavarā is happy to add a comment.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you, Ayya, and thank you, Ayya Tathālokā, also for all these great reflections and for really brilliant Dhamma talk. I mean, there's so much that you brought into the Dhamma talk. I'm just going to have to contemplate that for quite some time. Very, very rich. And Ayya Tathālokā's invitation to comment on the how to relate to Dhammas and sort of move away from the personal to the qualities of that are wholesome and that are unwholesome. That's really a really great part of what you were speaking about, Ayya Sobhanā, that's wonderful to reflect on a bit further and consider together. And what comes to my mind actually is the Sutta on Non-Conflict that we're going to look at on Sunday. Actually, we decided to look at on Sunday afternoon, the Exposition of Non-Conflict in Majjhima Nikāya. And I was looking at it the other day, and one of the things that really stood out is how the Buddha said, not to, like when giving a Dhamma talk, not to speak about you, to people individually. You're like this, or you're like that, or we should be like this or that, but rather to speak about the qualities, speak about the Dhamma, and how that can avoid people, the listeners, feeling, in any way attacked or shamed, or, the finger being pointed at them. And I think that's just such a valuable guideline for us, and which is what everyone's doing, of course, when they're teaching Dhamma. So yeah, to really again and again, I suppose, just come back to the Dhammas, the actual qualities. And I find it very helpful, because to consider what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, that's doable. When I consider situations like wars in the world, or political issues and so on, it's really difficult to disentangle what's wholesome, what's unwholesome, who's to blame, and so it's just a completely confusing, tangled web, and it doesn't help me at all to try and understand these things. But when I can consider, just simply, what is this quality wholesome, is it unwholesome, that I can do, that I can understand and investigate and look inside and see, understand, how to work with these qualities, where to pay attention, what to develop, what to let go of. So thank you so much, Ayya Tathālokā, for bringing that out. And thank you for this really amazing Dharma talk, Ayya Sobhanā, which there's so much there. I'm just bowled over, and I don't have any more to add, but just gratitude and appreciation. Thank you.
I guess we're going down in sequence and inviting all the Bhikkhunis to speak first. I wonder if Venerable Kaccayana has something to add.
We'll just say that Venerable Kaccayana is here with us this evening, as is the Uposatha, and also it's the last night of their silent and secluded personal retreat time. And they'll officially emerging tomorrow. So I feel like if they would like to say something, they're very welcome to, but under no obligation, and absolutely welcome.
Okay. Are there others among us who would like to, are we willing to add a comment on what you've learned about, especially about letting go of resentment, what you've learned about cultivating loving kindness towards those who are caught up in wars? I'm turning my head back and forth to see if anybody has got something to add. Do you add a comment? Or Satyama, do you have a comment to add? It's not required. Okay.
I think I would just maybe ask a question.
Yes, you have to ask it to the mic.
I just wonder if you might say something about the Indriya Bhavana Sutta, maybe just a word or two about how the Buddha described the process of using equanimity when having contact with the six bases, how to use equanimity to reflect on the true nature of the phenomena so as to let it go.
Well, my basic understanding of this, actually, I'll tell you, I have often wondered why some meditators have a lot of fruitful practice focused on the contact of the senses, on the 6 sense basis. And as I understand it, there's contact, there's the triple meeting, there's the contact of the senses, the feeling arises from that, and right from the feeling, right from that contact, in association to the feeling, then the fetter can arise just from there. That craving can arise just from there. It's such a fast or almost like instantaneous process. And so it's a wonderful practice of developing better and sharper, more acute and more continuous mindfulness to see how quickly you can discern that process in terms of the contact, the feeling, the craving, and seeing that. And it's just happening in a millisecond, but with very sharp and highly developed mindfulness. It can be experienced like as if in slow motion. And then the insight into that is a most fantastic way of blowing up the arising of craving. And it's like obliterated. When sometimes our teacher, Madhya often speaks about red hot mindfulness, which is the mindfulness like a hot skillet, which has been, it's very hot. If you're testing the skillet, you splash a little water on it. And if the skillet is hot, the water just evaporates instantly. So that's what you can develop when you have developed that Indriya Bhavana, that mindful awareness of the Indriya. I see a hand at the Hermitage, and I'd like to see who is put their hand up.
So I really appreciate you mentioning that, and also Seminary Satima for asking that question. And the analogy of the hot bowl lid in the sun and any water that touches it then just dissipating right away also came to mind. The strength of moment by moment awareness, mindfulness, and clear comprehension becomes so strong. There's something though that's like a basic orientation. And we have something very deep in us that's basically oriented towards getting and getting rid of. And when that's active, then all our sense contacts, even internal as well as external, are then oriented towards just, is it something to be got? And the psychologists say, like, to be got, we're thinking very deeply, is it to be eaten or is it to be had sex with, right? But maybe even more, I don't know, is it more deep than that, but more simple than that is just like to get or to get rid of. And I feel like when we notice that, when we see and understand that, there's also a chance to reorient and to choose that our basic orientation towards what is being experienced, whether internal or external, is not going to be about just getting or getting rid of. and to just see and know that that's an option, that we can be aware and be with experience, even be in a way actively involved with experience, not just passive, but like receptive, aware, and responsive. And it doesn't have to be about getting or getting rid of. And that just opens up a whole world of possibility. And for Samaneri Satima's question, then if that's not our orientation with regards to the contact, whatever kind of contact it is, whether the physical contacts or mental contacts, then, then the way that, how can I describe it? With one orientation, our systems are then primed to respond in one kind of way, that is, getting or getting rid of. And with this other orientation, to be receptive, aware, responsive, but not that, our systems are also primed to be exactly that, receptive and aware and responsive, and able to be active in kindness, in compassion, in appreciation. Also with this, it's like there is a basis. It opens up a natural basis for equanimity right there. And spaciousness and freedom. And this is just such a wonderful thing and very, very simple. I think even in the 15-minute mindfulness courses, sometimes these days, then this part actually does get mentioned. That is the reorientation. It's like just for a little while, just let go of that, put aside that motivation or orientation to get rid of, and to just be mindful, aware, receptive, and responsive. Thank you for listening. Those are some thoughts that arose, some thoughts of Dhamma.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you for your patient listening.
This may be a good moment to bring this discussion to a close. I appreciate all who are going to hear this this talk in the future. It should be appearing on our Facebook. As far as I know, it's still streaming over there on the Dhammadharini YouTube channel. So let's close with homage to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadin Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamma Namasam Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namah. Okay, thank you and good night.